Hello, my class, and welcome to your next maths lesson. So in the previous lesson, we were looking at comparing areas within a shape. Now we are going to continue with our maths today, and I'm going to share my screen with you. And in today's lesson, we are going to explain, we're moving on a little bit, we're going to be explaining what a unit and a non-unit fraction is. So we're moving on to some fractions, but before we start with that, let's have a look at our arithmetic for the day. So please make sure you have numbered from 1 to 10 and that you have a pencil and a piece of paper for these questions. So we're going to start off with 9 times 5, 9 times 5, 24 times 6, 670 as Roman numerals. What number is next in this sequence? 75, 125, 175. Can you give me the next number? What is 3 times 6? What is 72 divided by 9? What is half of 400? What is 4,353 plus 2,110? What is 2,387 minus 1,237? And what is 108 divided by 12? So pause the video now and complete your arithmetic for today. We are looking at unit and non-unit fractions today. So you're going to be looking at finding a fraction of a value. So I want you to think back. You may have to think back as far as year 2, but what can you remember about fractions? What is a fraction? What makes up a fraction? What have you learned about fractions so far? So when we're looking at a fraction, fractions are numbers that are written just like the one that we have over here. We have a number at the top that we call a numerator. And the number at the bottom we call a denominator. So your numerator goes at the top, and at the bottom you have your denominator. Okay, right, and the amount that you are looking for here is the parts of a whole. The denominator shows you how many parts your whole has been divided into, and your numerator is telling you the amount we are looking for. So 1 part of 4 is that there. So if this was my whole, a quarter of that, 1/4 of that would be that green bit there. So there are 4 counters in total. So our 4 is the whole that we are looking for. And the one number at the top, the numerator, is part of the whole. So how many parts of the whole are we looking at? The green one is 1 part of the whole. The whole is 4. So it is 1 part of 4. Okay. If we're looking at this one, in the previous slide, we looked at the green counter being 1 part of 4. The red counters will be 3/4 because they are 3 out of 4, and 4 is our whole. So if I had to ask you questions about this, saying how many, or what part of the counters are green, you would say 1/4 of the counters are green, 3/4 of the counters are red, because 3 parts of our whole are red and 1 part of our whole is green. So 3 out of 4 are red. When our numerator is greater than 1 and the denominator is a whole number, we call this a non-unit fraction. So say that with me, non-unit fraction. Non-unit fraction. So again, a non-unit fraction is a fraction when the numerator, which is the number at the top, is greater than 1. So it is greater than 1. So it can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, anything that is greater than 1, and that the denominator is a whole number. And we call that a non-unit fraction, which means if we are looking at our fraction and we've got 1 out of 4 are green, when our numerator, this number here, is equal to 1 and the denominator is a whole number, then we call that a unit fraction. So if the numerator is 1 and the denominator is a whole number, we call that a unit fraction, as opposed to in the first slide where the one before, where our numerator was bigger than 1 and our denominator was a whole number, and we called it a non-unit fraction. So let's write these fractions to complete these sentences. So our whole, before I let you do this, I'm going to show it to you. Okay, so our whole is made up of 3 parts. 1, 2, 3. How many of those counters? So then our whole number would go at the bottom. Okay, how many of those counters are yellow? It says 1 out of 3 of those counters are yellow, which means 2 of those counters are red. So 1/3 is yellow, 2/3 are red. And it says which of these is a non-unit fraction. Remember, with your non-unit fraction, if we go back, a non-unit fraction is where the numerator is bigger than 1. So in which one of those is our numerator bigger than 1? The answer, of course, is our red one. Our red one is our non-unit fraction. And the yellow one is our unit fraction, because it has a numerator of 1. Now it's your turn. Have a look at those counters and write the fraction of these counters to complete your sentences. I'm going to remind you again that your whole, the number that goes as your denominator, is the amount that make up the whole, and then your parts of your whole go at the top. So our whole is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's broken up. Our tower is made up of 6, and then it's got questions about how many of those are green, how many are yellow, and how many are blue. So write out these 3 sentences in full. So you put the fraction of the tower is green, a fraction of the tower is yellow, a fraction of the tower is blue. Can you tell me which ones are unit and non-unit fractions? Question A, what is a unit fraction? What is a non-unit fraction? Somewhere in your books, keep it written down somewhere nice and neatly, your own explanation of what a unit fraction and a non-unit fraction is. And then complete the sentences below. An example of a unit fraction is the numerator is always. An example of a non-unit fraction is the numerator is always greater than, and then finish those sentences. Please make sure when you are finishing those sentences to write them out completely and make sure that they are neatly written. You're not rushing through your work and you're writing on your lines. So what fraction, if we look at question A, of each shape is shaded, so that colored in? So what fraction is shaded? and write the fractions under each one, or you can just write A. If you can redraw it, great, or you can write A is this fraction, and B is this fraction and this fraction. And then it's your turn. And I would like you to just carry on with those from the previous bit. Sorry, let me do this with you first. So what fraction is shaded in each one? So what I would do is I would count the total of the pieces, and that will be my denominator. And then the colored in bit is my numerator. So if I count, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it is made up into 5 parts, make up the whole. And one of those 5 parts is colored in. In this one, again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts of a whole. And how many are colored in? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Which one's a unit fraction? Which one's a non-unit fraction? Give that a think. With this shape, see if you can complete it as well. Count the numbers that make up the whole. That is your denominator. The same with this one. And then your numerator is the shaded in parts. Have a go at these shapes yourself. You can have these labeled as A and B. So write what the fraction of each one is, and then maybe give it a quick label of whether or not it's a unit or a non-unit fraction. Here is your independent work for today. Color in 1/5 of each of these shapes. So you will be coloring in 1/5 of each shape. You can maybe draw them yourself or pause the video and well, you will have to redraw them, sorry. Pause the video now, redraw these shapes, making sure that they've got equal parts, and then color in 1/5. And then you can either use the same shapes or redraw them underneath. And then you're going to color in 3/5 of each one of those shapes. What is the same and what is different about your answers? And then also make sure to label which ones, if they are unit or non-unit fractions. Question 2 says circle 1/3 of the counters. So draw out these counters. Remember that when you are breaking them into 1/3, they need to be in 3 equal groups, and you will circle 1 group out of those 3 groups you have put them into. Then in question B, you will redraw them and circle 2/3 of your counters. And I want you to explain what is the same and what is different about your answers. Then let's move on to question 3. Write the fractions in the table. So you need to draw yourself a table of unit fractions and non-unit fractions, and then sort these fractions into the 2 columns. So you will need to decide whether it is a unit fraction or whether it is a non-unit fraction, and you will write that into each one. It also says write 2 more examples of your own unit fractions or non-unit fractions in each column, and you can try and do that in a different color so I can see which ones you have added. Please make sure to share your answers on Tapestry with us. If there are any questions, please make sure to keep hold of them, and we will refer back to them in our live lesson where we can chat about them.